Everyone, I'm Cerisse Velasco with Zynga. If you're not familiar with us, we are in-app mobile gaming. So think of games such as Words with Friends, NBA 2K that we have, as well as Star Wars Hunters, one of our newest ones. And I have the pleasure of being here with Joy and with Ben. And we're going to talk to you today about Saucony. Joy and Ben have been working with each other for several months now. Joy is new to Saucony. She'll kind of explain that to you. But overall, what we want to do really is kind of this session is really about how we are going to explore how Saucony is able to scale beyond the basic elite athlete and really dive down into the more general audience and how they're able to help with that. In addition, you'll actually see the great chemistry that these two have together for not knowing each other for very long. You'll find that they are very, very much entwined with each other. You'll find it really quickly. With that, I wanted to start off with our first video that we're going to be doing, which is our runner campaign. So can we play the video, please?
Doom scrolling.
Doom scrolling.
Doom scrolling.
Constantly swiping.
It's leading to anxiety and depression even.
Scrolling, scrolling, scrolling.
It was my mistake.
We're all scrolling too much. But here's a thumb-stopping stat. Your thumb scrolls the distance of 3 marathons a year. That's over 78 miles of cat videos, food pics, and mindless memes, running our physical and mental health into the ground. So running brand Saucony proposed a simple alternative. Move your feet more than your feed. Introducing the Marathon Challenge, an app that uses first-of-its-kind technology to compute the distance you scroll, then pits it against the distance you step. If you move more than you scroll, you'll earn exclusive Saucony swag and bragging rights over this little fella. The app launched in 7 countries on iOS and Android, was hyped on social and IRL. Then people across the globe started racing their thumbs.
Decided to come out with an app called Marathon that basically...
That is so cool! Marathon Challenge!
1.2 billion impressions, $11 million in media value, thousands of downloads. And the best part? We got people moving, with over 739,000 total miles run on the app. That's to the moon and back, twice. Turns out, beating your thumb feels pretty good. So the next time you feel the need to scroll, go on a run instead. And give your thumb the finger.
Ben, the first question's for you. Let's discuss the prequel to this campaign. What was a light bulb moment, the inspiration, the audience insights that you found, and how did you bring this to Joy to pitch it to her?
Well, look, I think Saucony is at a really interesting point in its history. It's the original running shoe, and it has a ton of credibility with elite runners, and it's been sold historically a lot through run specialty stores. So the brief was crystal clear when Saucony came to us, which is kind of a creative agency's dream, which was simply how do we go from elite to everyone? How do we broaden our appeal beyond just the 1% of Americans who will run some kind of competitive race, who might be attracted to a performance product? And in thinking about the brand's equity, but then also its growth opportunity, the insight kind of came to us when we thought, okay, Saucony is a brand that has so much equity in marathoning, right? Really what they're known for. But there are all of these people who travel a marathon of distance in kind of non-traditional ways. And it was at the time that the Supreme Court had ruled that NIL deals were on the table for students. And then we thought about nurses that had just been through so much during the COVID-19 pandemic and said, maybe it's worth looking at them. That's when we discovered that nurses actually travel a marathon per week on the job. Obviously, comfortable shoes that will perform well for them as they take critical care of us made a ton of sense, and then doing it in this very buzzworthy way. You know, never before had NIL been used for non-kind of traditional sports athletes. So doing it for nurses and treating them like the stars they are by doing the photo shoot, doing the signing, all of the trappings of a traditional NIL deal really caught the attention of the media. It made its way into the Run specialty publications, which of course furthers our equity with our historical audience, but it also reached far beyond that, as you saw, and frankly, achieved a media equivalency value far beyond what Saucony could spend on an initial initiative like this that was so focused at a point in time. So really one of those moments where the brand's core equity could be extended through a really surprising insight and then through an attention-getting execution.
That's amazing. I think when they told me about this, I never even thought about how much a nurse every day is walking. And in the end, they're really doing those marathons. So it's really great that you're able to align the brand with something that really means a lot to everybody. So it's awesome. The next question is actually for you, Joy. This campaign is very much an out of the box and not focused really on that runner specifically. How do you balance the reward or risk factor as a new CEO of a company that's been around for 126 years, which is amazing just in itself, whose tradition focuses more on that core audience of a runner?
Hi, everyone. So I think a little bit what Ben was talking about leads to an answer to your question. Number one, we have 126 years equity in run performance. And as Ben mentioned, less than 1% of the population runs marathons. And so if we were going to be a company who just wanted to maintain where we are, we would continue to just focus on that 1%. But we are in this beautiful time in running where it's crossing over into lifestyle. We're in a critical time where we want to position ourselves for growth. And so to do that, we have to think about what's a long-term gain for some of the things that we're doing now. And so this is part of that strategy. Number one, elite performance is the credibility we have in the space. The fact that for 126 years, all the way back to the first 4 Boston Marathoners, we've had people run in Saucony, lends itself the credibility to people who are looking for amazing shoes that look great but feel great, right? When we think about our peers in the space, some of them are coming out with lifestyle shoes, but they don't have 126 years of human performance labs based in Boston, talking to marathoners, talking about the plate in the shoe or the cushioning and what the benefit of that is to translate to the lifestyle segment, which we do. And so the opportunity for us to make sure that we're balancing our history and our equity and heritage is really simple. We put it out front. We talk about it. We use it as a badge because we're the only ones that can actually say that and back it up. But we also understand that the newer consumer, Gen X, Gen Y, Alpha, they are looking for something that feels good but also looks even better. And so we have to keep our eye on the long-term goal, which is to bring new buyers, new people into the category by talking about the heritage, but balancing it with the relevancy that's important today.
Wonderful. So the next question we have is actually for both of you. So feel free to jump in and play off each other on this. In the digital-first advertising ecosystem these days, the idea of brand performance is front and center because everything can be measured and also ROAS calculated. As a team, how do you keep innovating for Saucony while being mindful of delivering on what stakeholders need from your efforts? That's the first question. So, and the second question is, how do you balance the KPIs you need to deliver now while building the brand for the future?
You want to go? Okay.
This is a shared passion of ours. So Joy will go
it's
first.
also relevant because we're right in the middle of planning, and right after this, I have to go justify a budget that I'm recommending for our Havas partners are here for media for 2025. Listen, I think you're right, we're in a digital first environment. Consumers are online on their phone. They're making decisions so quickly, and when you're in retail, which moves at the dynamic pace of consumers, you have to always look at what's the conversion constantly. Before this job, I was the CRO at Havas, and so we were always talking about ROAS as just one KPI. It's not the only KPI. And at Wolverine, all of our brands are looking at how do we balance investment with efficiency, but while also building brand health. And right now, Saucony within elite performance is number 1, but within running in general or active lifestyle in general, we're 6th. That's because at the end of the day, we've been very lower funnel focused. And so we all know that people will make a decision way before we get that ad to convert, right? We're making decisions along the path of the journey. And so as I've joined the company, I've really focused them on making sure they understand that people buy brands first, products second. and the product is really what you're doing at that programmatic end of the funnel stage, we'll have that down pat. We'll always make ROAS there. But what we want to do is make sure that we have new buyers coming to the top, they fall in love with brands. And so we've expanded our channels beyond just digital. And I think part of that interest in doing that is because we all know that we need to go after the consumers that our largest peer in that category is losing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, at Donor, we work with a variety of brands at the intersection of modern and Main Street. Some of these brands were born modern and very much grew up in a D2C era where it was very lower funnel focused at a time when performance media was a lot more affordable and the platforms hadn't really figured out their value to marketers yet, and kind of got addicted to that bottom of funnel demand generation type media. And suddenly over the years have realized our business stopped growing. CAC is getting more and more expensive. CPMs are going up on these platforms. They figured out their value to us. They're squeezing us for more and more money. And suddenly, to Joy's point, our ROAS, which is just one measure, seems really healthy, yet our fundamental business has stopped growing. You can't run a business on ROAS no matter how good it is at the end of the day and grow it significantly. So we've really been big champions at Donor of the idea of brand and performance at once, because most brands don't have money to do both separately. And we fundamentally believe that creativity can be an economic multiplier with the right idea in place, paired with the right bottom of funnel performance mechanisms in place.
I love this whole point too. My CFO corporate, she just, I was having lunch with her on Monday, and I guess I said it in a meeting, I don't know. And her first slide was, focusing on lower funnel only is like a drug. You will die. And I was like, great. It's kind of gone through the fact that because I think I did say, I was like, it's like a drug, right? You get addicted to the fact that you can immediately see returns, you can immediately see the results. And that is it's very narrow focus. So I think if your CFO is quoting you, then I'm feel good about 2025 budgets.
I think you have momentum, yeah.
Most definitely.
I think one of the things that can open people's minds to this is success, right? It all sounds interesting in theory, but if you've never seen brand and performance working hand in hand together, then it's kind of hard to believe because it's kind of against traditional wisdom. But I think the beauty, back to Cerisse's question, of the digital ecosystem that we now play in is that actually that journey from a brand moment to a demand performance moment where you're closing a sale, that sales funnel can be collapsed. We all know TikTok made me buy it, right? We can see something in an instant, fall in love with the brand, and have it in my Amazon cart same day, have it to my house same day. Except in Michigan. But that reality is really exciting, and I think it is something that sometimes people need to see to believe. And that was actually the topic of the second case that we brought for Saucony to share.
Awesome, which actually is my favorite of the two personally, because as a Zynga, I know you don't like this one as much, but I love them both. They're both great, but this one for me was a little bit more hit home just because you kind of gamified something, and that's what Zynga does. So it's nice to see that it's actually gaming as a whole is kind of be introduced in different ways. But we'll talk about the next one. So the next is the Marathon Challenge, and which drives users to interact with your Stride app. The purpose of this really is to inspire people to move their feet more than their feed. That adds gamification of the strolling versus the scrolling factor. So let's play the clip so you can see why this is my favorite of the two.
Doom scrolling.
Doom scrolling.
Doom scrolling.
Constantly swiping. It's leading to anxiety and depression even.
Scrolling.
It was my mistake.
We're all scrolling too much. But here's a thumb-stopping stat. Your thumb scrolls the distance of 3 marathons a year. That's over 78 miles of cat videos, food pics, and mindless memes, running our physical and mental health into the ground. So running brand Saucony proposed a simple alternative. Move your feet, more than your feet. Introducing the Marathon Challenge, an app that uses first-of-its-kind technology to compute the distance you scroll, then pits it against the distance you step. If you move more than you scroll, you'll earn exclusive Saucony swag and bragging rights over this little fella. The app launched in 7 countries on iOS and Android, was hyped on social and IRL, Then people across the globe started racing their thumbs.
Decided to come out with an app called Marathon that basically
That is so cool. Marathon Challenge.
1.2 billion impressions, $11 million in media value, thousands of downloads. And the best part? We got people moving, with over 739,000 total miles run on the app. That's to the moon and back, twice. Turns out, beating your thumb feels pretty good. So the next time you feel the need to scroll, go on a run instead. And give your thumb the finger.
I will say one thing. I know we jokingly said it's not my favorite, but it is my favorite in this sense. The thing that I love about working with partners like donors is that they take an insight from our insight that we are a marathon-based company, and they bring it to the relevancy to consumers. And to me, that it doesn't matter if I like it or not because I'm one person. It's really the fact that I know it'll resonate with consumers and it's authentic to us, right? We've owned marathons, but it meant nothing until we were able to do both of these campaigns, which is bringing it to the consumer who we want together. So I do appreciate it, and I do love working with Ben.
Yeah, I mean, I thought when they had told me how they came up with those two concepts just to help sell a shoe, I was like, that is actually very insightful for both of them. So amazing in itself.
Look, I think it's one of those things that sounds good in a video and was good in practice. Like, as someone who participated in the Marathon Challenge, it was the perfect thing to keep me accountable during the week. I would be watching my little line graph and thinking, I've got to get out of here. I need to take a little extra walk or an extra jog. So it really did change even my behavior as someone who knew what was going on and worked on it. And then you go back to the brand and performance conversation. This is a campaign that performed all the way through that. So unprecedented exposure for Saucony, 1.2 billion earned media impressions, far more money than we could spend on paid media because it struck that cultural nerve, as Joy talked about, led to an immediate increase in brand consideration of 16 points among people who were not elite athletes, but who maybe just ran 1 to 2 times per week. So pretty dramatic increase in brand consideration for a growth audience for us. But then, look, Saucony does business in 2 major ways, D2C, but also through run specialty and wholesale. In run wholesale, sell through, so getting those shoes off the shelf, up 33% during the life of this campaign. D2C in a market like the UK where it activated, up 154% over historical products. So by balancing that brand moment, unprecedented exposure, cultural relevance, brand consideration, you can see that collapsed funnel where it paid off immediately. And I think that's how you create believers within brands, that brand and performance both matter and they can be done at once through high-level creativity and strong bottom-of-the-funnel work.
Awesome. Well, that was one of my questions, and we kind of answered it ahead of time, so we'll move on to the next one. Joy, this one's for you. Can you explain or expand on the growth mindset that we kind of talked about a little bit earlier, that you have for the Saucony brand, and how you're future-proofing the brand to make sure that you're fresh, and that you're reaching that Gen Z alpha audience to build not only brand awareness, but brand equity?
Yeah. So I think there's 2 ways. Number one, when we first started working with Donor, we had 2 consumers. And I think the work that they've been doing with us is to help us combine what we've decided to go after one consumer. No longer are people just runners. They actually are doing a lot of different things. And we're no longer saying that we can only talk to people who run 5 times a week, because that was totally putting us in a box. So for long-term longevity and growth, we had to expand our mind around the fact that we have to talk to more consumers who are moving. We also, I hate to say this, we had a much older consumer. So there's no longevity in that, just based off of genetics. So we needed to make sure we understood where is that new group coming. And if you live in New York, or if you live in a major city, or if you live in a smaller city, you can see run crews every day. I was actually in Harlem last night, and at 9 o'clock, there was 25 people running down the street together in a run crew. That's an insight. That's a cultural norm that we're seeing everywhere globally. We're seeing it a lot in places like London, Paris, but also in places like Vancouver. And so for Saucony, and it's very, I think, poignant to the title, we're making sure that we're not focusing just on that elitist athlete, that person who goes into run specialty with confidence. I don't know if you've ever gone into run specialty and never had a marathon. It's intimidating. If you've never done a 10K, it's intimidating. We're doing everything in our power to make sure that even at retail, they're embracing new runners. We had a major call the other day with our top account, the CEO, and he came to us and said, we are seeing more of your consumer, that one consumer come in and we don't know how to talk to them. They're younger, they're using TikTok, they're using social networks to tap into run crews. So our goal right now to make sure that we're here much longer and being at the forefront is saying, again, we have the history, but we also have great product, great design, and we also reflect the consumer. I think the third piece is we probably need to do more campaigns like the ones you've seen, because even though they were done a couple years ago, they still feel good today. And I think as a new CMO, I want to tap into not only the insight, but the way that those campaigns actually move the business. Because the truth is, we don't have $1 zillion. So we do need to leverage every single insight and every single creativity that Donor has and some of our other partners to make sure that we are reaching the consumer and pushing growth for our business.
Awesome. I think personal experience of, I'm definitely not a runner, but I was having brunch with a friend of mine in our small little town, and literally there was the people who ran. They all were like a little running group, but after the running group, they all had beers afterwards and had brunch. So I think there is that ability to reach those consumers who aren't maybe officially runners but want to, and really go after them.
I mean, run crews are amazing. Are you in a run crew? I'm not in a run crew.
Yes, I have been involved. And yeah, I fit right into that demographic. And I think one of the things that Joy has really brought to the brand that's been amazing is the redefinition of the target audience. And we now talk about these move makers. These are people who are not on their couch all day. They're people who are out in the world making things happen. And immediately you know who they are. And you know that they're a growth opportunity. And that's one of the things that I think Donor in particular has been really good at, is understanding these Main Street people and how a brand that maybe has been known for one thing in the past can expand into the future and grow into the future with an audience that's specific still, but much broader than where they've been. And I think that's an art, because you still need to maintain a level of aspiration so that you're not just kind of showing up in a generic way, but in a way that doesn't exclude people or make them see themselves as not part of the brand. And I think to Joy's point, that's one of the things that Run Club, fun runs with beer afterwards, that culture really invites people in. And we know that's a healthy thing for the business, but also for humanity to invite more people into just getting moving.
And if you're in New York for the marathon, we do have a run club that's going to run from our pop-up in Soho all the way to Columbus Circle. So you can just go to Saucony, you can sign up. Please do that, because it's going to have beers afterwards as well.
Awesome. Well, we are about out of time. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, look at all those questions. Nice. Go ahead.
What was the toughest thing that you had to do with all the executives to convince them of change in direction?
Around the consumer? I didn't have to do a lot, because I walked into this perspective that we're not doing well right now. So the executive, so like the CEO of Wolverine, he was open, because he's like, we have to change. So we just had to present the case. I don't know how much the donor team was involved initially in kind of setting the case, but when I walked in, I basically went through kind of the insights from our consumer insights team. Our futures team is really great, that talked about here's the future of running and the run culture. Run culture specifically, that where the move maker is, speaks to two parts. It speaks to the physical piece of running, but we know after COVID, there's so much mental health and social piece and community that need. So all of the data was there. It was just putting the story together internally. I will also say at Wolverine, they let us run independently, so I didn't have to do a lot of convincing. I just said, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah. I'd say one of the hard things along the way has to do with the Saucony strength, which is that they really do also know that elite runner, and they do know the marathoner, and making the case that you can broaden without losing your base. Because that can feel really scary when you know how to do this really well, when you have that level of equity with the elite athlete, to make the case that you can maintain that while also growing. That's a big thing to tend to, and a big part of the story.
Do we have time for one more? Okay, perfect. Go
I don't know if you saw, there was an article probably like 2 months ago that said run clubs are the new dating app. So I think what excites me the most is that Saucony was already there. I mean, this is the blessing for a global CMO to walk into a brand that's ripe for like new ideas, new thinking, and basically saying, what do you think we should do? And so what excites me the most is that the brand is feeling momentum in a category that we see growth in, and that we're actually saying, how do we stay authentic to our heritage, but can we tap into these culture moments? I'll give you a quick example that I love the most. Saucony, when I walked into the business, Saucony was having a moment around breakdancing. For better or for worse, everybody was into breakdancing around the Olympics. I walked in and I said, it doesn't make sense to me. I've worn Saucony since I was 12, but I didn't understand that they have history and authenticity in breakdancing, because in 2005, they created a shoe from their catalog that was from 1940s. They created a shoe in 2005 in partnership with a breaking crew in Boston called the Floor Lords. So what excites me is the most is that we have that history. What the biggest challenge is for me is that we didn't tell that story. We basically just started doing what all of our peers were doing and showing athletes wearing our shoes who were breakdancing. We didn't explain that we have authenticity and we have equity here. We have to do that better, because then we'll pull in that generation. Because the biggest part about the generation you mentioned is that they understand authenticity better than my generation. They can sniff out if you're just here to pay to be there, or if you truly have authority in the space. And we do. We just have to dig up those stories, tell them in a very relevant way, engaging way, and making sure we're not riding the trend, but we're leading it.
Awesome. Well, we're done. Thank you very much. It was
Thanks,
a pleasure.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.